controversy, opinion, point of view. This is Prime News.
Welcome to Prime News. I'm Vinny Politan. Just an unbelievable story out of Florida. Now, you remember the hiccup girl, the teen who made national headlines a few years ago, is now facing first-degree murder charges. That was back in 2007. Jennifer Mee appeared on some morning shows to discuss her uncontrollable hiccups, which were eventually cured. But here she is 3 years later, charged with murder. Cops say she lured a man she met online to a vacant home where two male suspects jumped him in a botched robbery. Shannon Griffin struggled and was shot multiple times. Cops say the suspects got about 50 bucks. We're taking your calls and comments. Should the hiccups have anything? Do they have anything to do with this, or is this a possible defense? 1-877-TEL-HLN. That's 877-835-5456. Joining me now, Emily Nips, staff writer for the St. Pete Times, and family therapist Paul Hokemeyer. Paul, let me go right to you on this one. She's in the headlines about these hiccups. She reaches out. She's on all the morning shows. She's sort of in the media. She gets cured, and now she gets into trouble like this. Is it possible that there could be any connection between the two?
Well, what we have here is a tragic example of a teenage life that's taken a very wrong turn. We know that teenagers are very vulnerable and that they're subject to wild emotions, poor impulse control, lack of judgment. We also know that they are forming their identities and that it's very important for parents to pay attention to who their kids are hanging around with.
Emily Nips, let me talk to you. Who is she hanging around with? There's a couple other individuals charged in this whole thing. What was her situation? Where was she in life? What was she doing at the time that this whole thing allegedly happened?
Well, there were indications that she was dating one of the suspects. You know, she actually was dating another, she has another boyfriend who's in jail right now. And it sounded like she met the victim online. They'd been chatting for some time, and she'd arranged to meet with the man and ended up luring him behind this home where he was attacked.
Let's take a listen to what Chief Chuck Harmon had to say about this as he talks about, and sort of gives a warning, and we've heard this a million times, about meeting people online.
They didn't know each other. We found no connection that they've ever met other than through this networking site within this last week, and a meeting was set up and arranged. So to those out there, their parents or friends or whatever, the message is, you know, be careful who you're having a conversation with online. You just never know.
So, Emily, do we know what life was like for this young woman 3 years after the fact? I mean, was she living a normal life? Was she living at home? Who was she hanging out with? Do we have any sort of background on how she went from someone who had these uncontrollable hiccups, got them cured, to first-degree murder?
Well, I talked to her mother today, who defended Jennifer and said she was a sweet girl, but she was a follower and not a leader, so she was very easily influenced. And she said, the mother said she was very concerned about Jennifer after she gained all this notoriety because of her hiccups, and men were contacting her online, and she was chatting with strangers, and she just felt like Jennifer was really naive. She also said that Jennifer was still enrolled in high school, but about a year and a half after the whole hiccup incident, she went to go take the FCAT, which is a standardized test in Florida, and had the hiccups and was kicked out of the testing room. And according to the mother, they didn't find another room for her to test in, and Jennifer never returned to school. I think she would have been a sophomore or junior at the time. So she never returned to school after that. Her grandfather said she worked at the call center. She was receiving disability payments that were related to her hiccups.
So what was the status of her health recently? I mean, was she still suffering from these hiccups? Would they reoccur?
Yeah, the mother said that she still would get the hiccups sometime for a week or weeks at a time. So, you know, life had to be pretty tough having hiccups all the time, but it sounded like her bigger problem was the crowd she was hanging out with.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, Paul, if there's any connection between the crowd she's hanging around with and the notoriety that she gets. You know, you get into the news, your face is splashed across the newspapers, you're on television, you're on radio. All of a sudden, you've got your 15 minutes of fame. People are going to come calling.
Well, we also know, too, that teens are very susceptible to addiction, and someone who's in the media a lot has the high of being in the media, and that they could get addicted to that, and there could be an element of sensationalism that they keep on striving for. The bit about the friends is very, very true. People need to be aware of who their kids are hanging out with, and we know that kids are profoundly influenced by their friends, and again, parents need to be aware of who their kids are hanging out with.
Absolutely. We're going to take your phone calls on this one, 877-TEL-HLN. Also going to take a look at what you're saying on Facebook. In the meantime, also ahead on Prime News. A high school principal declares a war on sports. Last year, she bolted the bleachers to the wall so parents couldn't watch their kids play. Now she's banning home games. Will no sports really mean better grades?
Prime News. Brought to you by eHarmony.com. eHarmony. Love begins here.
I had a friend that actually suggested eHarmony, and my reaction, violent as it probably was, I was like, I'm not desperate. I'm not going to go to an internet dating site. And then, you know, they told me about people that they knew, and I started to think that, you know, what I've done in the past hasn't worked. So maybe I should try something different. And I did. And that was eHarmony.
Review all your matches for free at eHarmony.com.
Look at all this stuff for coffee. Oh, there's tons. French presses, espresso tampers, filters. It can get really complicated. Not nearly as complicated as shipping it, though. I mean, shipping is a hassle.
Not with priority mail flat rate boxes from the Postal Service. If it fits, it ships anywhere in the country for a low flat rate.
That is easy. Best news I've heard all day. I'm so amped. I mean, not amped, excited. I mean, that's sort of amped. Really kind of in between.
Have you ever thought about decaf?
You think that'll help?
Yeah.
Priority mail flat rate shipping starts at just $4.90, only from the Postal Service. A simpler way to ship.
If you believe that investors should be heard, not herded.
If you have the audacity to believe I can see you in 2 weeks is quite frankly weak.
If you buy the renegade idea that press 9 for more options is not an option.
Join the nearly 7 million investors who think like you do. FaceTime and ThinkTime make a difference.
Join us.
Join us.
Join us.
At Edward Jones, it's how we make sense of investing.
Did you know a problem in your heart can cause a stroke in your brain? It's true. An irregular heartbeat called atrial fibrillation, or AFib, can make a blood clot form here in your heart that can break free and go straight to your brain, where it can cause a serious stroke. Having atrial fibrillation gives you a 5 times greater risk of stroke than if you didn't have it. Strokes that are twice as likely to be deadly or severely disabling as other types of strokes. If you or someone you care for have atrial fibrillation, even if you're already taking medication, there are still important things you'll want to know. For a free interactive book, call 1-877-578-AFib or log on to afibstroke.com. Learn more about the connection between atrial fibrillation and strokes and get advice on how to live with AFib. And with this valuable information in your hand, talk to your doctor. Call 1-877-578-AFib today.
Every night, we want justice.
Nancy Grace, Legal News, Her Views. Every night at 8 and 10 Eastern.
HLN, News and Views.
That's Jennifer Me back in 2007, suffering from uncontrollable hiccups. Well, she apparently had that problem somewhat cured, still would have bouts from time to time, but not completely uncontrollable. Now she's got bigger trouble. First-degree murder charges are now pending, and my guess is in a courtroom somewhere down the line, you're going to hear about these hiccups, whether it's at sentencing or at the guilt phase of this case. Welcome back to Prime News. I'm Vinny Politan, taking your phone calls on this 877-TEL-HLN. Let's go to Shelley, who's in Ohio tonight. Shelley, your thoughts about what has happened in the life of Jennifer Me, the hiccup girl.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my call. I think this girl made choices, and I think those 2 fellows that were with her made choices, and their choice was to take that man's life. And I think the same thing should be done to all 3 of them.
Shelley, thanks so much for the call. Shelley, feeling no sympathy for this woman who suffered from hiccups, but look at what the allegations are here. Here's what police are saying, that the victim met Me online. She lured the victim to a vacant house, 2 male suspects accosted him, and the victim was then shot after a struggle. Again, someone that was met online. Here's what you're saying on Facebook tonight. Lindsay says she clearly just has issues. Nothing to do with any notoriety she received. Debbie says, I never believed her hiccups were real to begin with. She talked just fine without having to hiccup in the middle of a sentence. And Kara says, here's the defense. The hiccups made her do it. Paul Hokemeyer, because I'm looking ahead at what this trial may or may not look like. And, you know, defense attorneys have to look where they can for mitigation. Now, there's apparently some admissions that were made according to police. So if we get to a sentencing in this case, I'm sure the defense is going to talk about what a tough life she has had. What does that do? Could that impact someone's ability to think straight, the fact that you suffer from this sort of condition where at any point you can start having hiccups for weeks at a time?
Well, you know, I'm not really sure. I think in terms of if it's a traumatic event, if there's trauma involved, that trauma has a profound impact on our ability to think clearly and our emotional well-being. Whether hiccups arise to the level of trauma,
maybe
I'm not quite sure
sleep
about that.
deprivation as a result of hiccups. You can't sleep maybe for a couple days. That'll drive you crazy.
It sounds like I know.
You're not buying my defense. That's okay. That's okay, Paul. You don't have to buy it. I'm just throwing it out there because I know some attorney somewhere is going to say it. Paul Hokemeyer, Emily Nips, thanks so much. Straight ahead on Prime News.